Okay, so I love Violet Evergarden. So much so that it is easily one of my top 10 favorite anime series of all time. And why wouldn't I? From its vibrant, absolutely stunning animation by KyoAni to the goosebump-inducing score, not to mention its poignant themes of love and how it can so often be lost in translation or never communicated at all. Its story, setting, and characters are presented in such a brilliant way that I was left in tears nearly every episode, which is saying a lot because it takes quite a bit to make me cry. No, I'm the one laughing maniacally while everyone else sobs. Anyway, this show is absolutely phenomenal, and if you're watching this video, I'm assuming you've seen it too and agree with me. Hopefully. Now, seeing that this show was released in early 2018, there's been one movie that was released last year, there's another coming later this year, and there's no official word of a season 2 in sight, I figured it'd be better later now than never to present a theory that I've had since my very first viewing of the show. Are Benedict and Violet siblings? Now, before I start my whole spiel, I would like to point out that I have not read the light novels of Violet Evergarden. I have only seen the anime adaptation. So my whole theory and my entire thought process hinges on what is shown in the show. So if something in the light novels completely contradicts my theory, then all of you light novel readers are free to just laugh at me and just laugh at the idiot I'm about to make of myself. But I hope you can enjoy this theory anyway, so let's get down to business. I love Benedict. He's definitely my favorite out of the supporting cast. But the funny thing is that I can't exactly pin down why I'm so drawn to him. Is it the laid-back, straightforward demeanor? Is it that impeccable fashion sense? Is it that very nice voice in English and Japanese? Is it just because I'm a basic bitch? I mean, he's one fine anime man if ever I saw one. Not to mention he's literally the only attractive young guy in the main cast outside of Gilbert, who's dead. Maybe alive? I don't know. Is it the boots? My point is that Benedict drew my interest almost immediately, and I'm not alone. Pretty much everyone I know who's seen the show loves him. But the funny thing is, we really don't know that much about him. Sure, we know about his personality. Like I said before, he's pretty straightforward and honest. He rarely ever holds back what he's thinking and gets right to the point. While he's cynical and sarcastic at times, he's never harsh or cruel, and even though the dolls tease him at points, he always seems to have their backs and helps out whenever he can. So, while a bit brutish and frank, he clearly has a kind and helpful heart. No, the mystery is in his backstory, which, granted, we don't find out much about the other characters' backstories either, but what we get about Benedict is the most vague.
This is Benedict. He's a postman here. He's an old friend from before I started this company.
And that's all we get. That one line is the only backstory on Benedict that we get, and it's not even from his own mouth. With Hajin's Catalea, Iris, and Erica, though what we learn about their past is minimal, we learn it either from their dialogue, inner monologues, or flashbacks. We learn the past directly from the person. This way, we better understand their motivations and choices that led them to where they are. We don't get that with Benedict. That sparse introduction from Hajin's is all that's provided. This would make sense if he was a one-off CH employee who just shows up in the first episode, but he's clearly a part of the main cast. Heck, most of the episodic characters that Violet meets have more fleshed out backstories than him. Which brings me to my theory. Not just that Violet and Benedict are siblings, but that Benedict also has a military past. I'll start off by getting the first obvious clue out of the way. The show goes out of its way to show how beautiful Violet is. Just about every client looks at her in awe upon meeting her, and she turns heads everywhere she goes. In many of these shots, a lot of focus is put on her flowing blonde hair and striking blue eyes. These features, in addition to her unique mannerisms, help her to stand out to both the characters and the audience. Outside of Olivia Webster in episode 7, I literally cannot recall a single background or one-shot character that has blonde hair, and if they do, it's definitely not as light as Violet's. I can't think of anyone in the show with blue eyes either. But you know who does have a blonde hair blue eye combination? Not only that, but has blonde hair and blue eyes that are the exact same shade as Violet's? Benedict. Not only that, but besides Benedict being slightly tanner, he and Violet share a lot of the same physical attributes, including facial structure. Though, of course, this last point could be just attributed to KyoAni's style of the show. But still, the fact that Benedict is the only character besides Violet to have blonde hair and blue eyes, the same shade of blonde hair and blue eyes, doesn't seem like a coincidence or design choice to me. And physical similarities aside, I think it's safe to say that Violet also has a pretty unique relationship with Benedict. He's the first person she meets at the CH Postal Service, so she's known him the longest out of all their co-workers, by like a day, but that's besides the point. While the dolls and Hodgins seem to tiptoe around her very militaristic demeanor and emotional obliviousness, Benedict, after seeing how literally and quickly she takes instructions, immediately accepts Violet's thought process and takes it in stride. He understands that it's no good to circle around a subject and to just get to the point so there's no room for confusion. And we see him adapt this immediately when the two of them and Hodgins have dinner in episode 1.
I meant you can deliver the mail tomorrow.
And make sure to take breaks during work. You just got out of the hospital after all.
It's not a problem.
Alright, you know what? It is a problem.
Benedict is the first person to outwardly tell her that her disregarding herself for a mission is a huge issue. He says what he means and doesn't hold anything back, which, while it gets him in trouble with Hodgins,
Yeah, that's a problem.
Hey, I was trying to put it
How was
nicely.
I supposed to know?
is helpful for Violet's understanding and comfort. And as the series goes on, we begin to see a few instances of them very subtly supporting each other. In the OVA, which takes place in the earlier half of the season, Benedict suggests that the whole group help pitch lyrics for Violet's job with an opera singer, an idea that everyone is a bit skeptical of, except for Violet, who defends that it's actually perfect. In this instance, we see the similarities in their thought processes. Irma said she wanted a love letter that could speak to any person, so a literal way to go about it is to get multiple people's perspectives, and it's this idea that actually works. Vice versa, near the end of the series during the Continental Railroad arc, when Colonel Dietfried says that a mindless weapon like Violet couldn't possibly write worthwhile letters, Benedict joins Catalea in defending her and her work. I find this scene super interesting because while Catalea is understandably irritated and responds as such, Benedict is a lot more chill in his retort, if you can even call it that.
It's true. She might be flawed, but she's still trying her best. In fact, there are even people she saved with her letters.
Going back to the OVA, he knows firsthand the effect that Violet's words can have on other people, but I find his choice of words here really interesting. Obviously, he can't speak for other people in terms of feeling saved by the letters, so is he talking about himself? It's moments like these that, while they're minor in the grand scheme of the story, really help in building and shaping a character in their relationships. And with Benedict, whom we don't know much about, every little bit helps. And with that comes the big question. If Violet and Benedict are siblings, how did they get separated? How did Violet end up being a mindless weapon for several militaries? And what was Benedict's life like before becoming a postman? In episode 5, Violet tells Princess Charlotte that while no one knows the exact details of her birth, she is believed to be around 14 years old, which adds her to the long list of anime characters that do not look their age. But conversely, while Benedict's age is not stated in the show, his wiki page says that he is 18 years old, which is a lot more believable, though I honestly thought he was a little older, probably in his 20s. But this puts the two of them at about a 4-year age gap, which leads me to believe that Benedict knows that he has, or had, a younger sister. We can assume that Benedict and Violet were together when she was a baby, or maybe even a few years later. By her behavior with Gilbert and others, it's very clear that a military life is all that Violet's ever known, or at the very least, it's all that she can remember. By this, we can conclude that either her and Benedict were separated when she was an infant, she was taken in by the military as a toddler, early enough to where she wouldn't be able to remember anything that came before, or if she was taken when they were older, it might be that her and Benedict suffer from dissociative amnesia, which is where people unconsciously forget things related to stressful or traumatic events. Which brings us to how they got separated. For this, I'm assuming that Benedict is also an orphan because, one, he doesn't really seem to have many friends outside of his friends at work, and two, it's a World War I era anime. Everyone's an orphan, 'cause war. So, in every scenario, the parents are pretty much diddy-done dead. Anyway, we know from flashbacks that Violet was not originally with the Leidenschaftlich military. God, what a name. Rather, Dietfried just kind of found her the way that she was, meaning that some other group had kept and conditioned her into being a nearly emotionless weapon. We clearly see that she slaughtered a good number of his men while on a ship, so while Dietfried is clearly a dick for playing the Finders Keepers card and rolling with it, he's not responsible for making Violet the way that she is. So, how did a military group outside of Leidenschaftlich get a hold of Violet in the first place? Well, my theory posits that Benedict and Violet, along with their parents, lived along Leidenschaftlich's landlocked borders. We're told by Hodgins in episode 1 that the war lasted about 4 years, which makes sense given the anime's inspiration with World War I. However, this means that the war would have started long after Violet was taken. However, like in our own world before World War I, tensions would slowly be rising amongst the countries in the continent, and surely there would have been skirmishes and incidents along the borders. So my theory posits that Benedict and Violet's family was a victim of one of these skirmishes or raids by another country, a scenario in which Benedict gets away, only to turn around and see his house ablaze and/or hear gunshots in the distance. So he comes to the only conclusion that he can, that his entire family has been killed. Only, unbeknownst to him, there is one survivor, his little sister. And whether they plan to originally make her a weapon or they have other intentions, Violet is taken by the other group, and her story continues until she's found by Dietfried and handed over to Gilbert. Benedict, who is anywhere from 4 to 8 years old at this point given our previous assumptions, ends up finding help and is taken into the care of an orphanage. We'll just say that somehow he doesn't end up getting adopted, and he stays there until his early teens and the Great War begins. And this is where Hodgins' one-line introduction comes back into play.
This is Benedict. He's a postman here. He's an old friend from before I started this company.
Note that he says he knows Benedict from before starting the company, not necessarily before the war started. It's this specificity that leads me to believe that they both met during their service. Now, I'm not implying that Benedict was a child soldier, or even a soldier at all. It's made very clear by many in the show that Violet is the exception in that regard, and Benedict would have only been 14 at the time the war started. So instead, I think he was more of a messenger for the army, running notes in between fronts and between Command and Leiden to the battlefield. So while he may have not fought directly, he certainly would have learned how to defend himself and probably made his way through some tough terrain and had to dodge a bullet or two. It would have been during this job that he would have made acquaintance with Hodgins, who, knowing that Benedict would be left jobless and homeless when the fighting ended, offered him a job as a postman at his new company. Besides that one line, there's other evidence that supports Benedict's military background too. Being around soldiers for a couple years, it could explain why he's more accepting of Violet's behavior than others. Oh, and that interaction with Dietfried I mentioned earlier? For someone talking to not only a high-ranking military officer, but a member of one of the most influential families in the country, he doesn't really seem to be that intimidated or give any shits about it. No doubt he had to deal with Dietfried's type all the time during the war. But even before this confrontation, he has this interesting exchange with Catalea.
Will accompany this special envoy to Garderik and take part in the public, peace treaty exchange?
Yes. Once that's over, it will finally put an end to the war.
I don't even need to say anything. His tone, the framing, the dialogue, that scene speaks for itself. And then there's the finale considering the peace treaty and the train. First is the fact that Hodgins sends Benedict to accompany Catalea at all. We've seen her travel alone just as far and for just as important missions before. And even though Hodgins knows that there will be military personnel to handle any trouble, he sends Benedict anyway. And we see why in the next episode. When the train is attacked, while he looks obviously worried, he doesn't seem as panicked as Catalea and the others. Then on the bridge, when no one else is taking action, this boy leaps out of a still moving carriage and sprints down the tracks to help Violet. When she says to get the other bomb, he understands immediately, leaves her to it, and jumps off the bridge so precisely and forcefully that he manages to kick off the bomb from the support, something that Violet had to break her last remaining metal arm to accomplish. Then he somehow manages to monkey bar his way over to her on the other side of the bridge in a matter of seconds and catch her mid-air after an explosion. All while in heels. What a goddamn king. So if you're telling me this guy doesn't have some kind of training under his belt, you're nuts. So, family dies, Violet is taken and turned into a weapon, and Benedict lives his life in an orphanage and becomes a Leiden messenger, and we've reached the beginning of the series. So the question remains, does Benedict know Violet's his sister? No, he doesn't. Like I said, he's under the assumption that his entire family was killed. Not only that, but Gilbert is the one who gave Violet her name, so Benedict would have known her as something different as a baby. I know I've been on my tangent for a little while now, but there is one more thing that I would like to touch upon, and that is the movie that was released on Netflix earlier this year, Eternity and the Auto Memory Doll. The reason being that this film's plot is literally Violet and Benedict helping two lost siblings find each other. In the beginning of the film, while Violet is helping Isabella York train to become a debutante, she learns that the young heiress's name is Amy Bartlett, and that she became a debutante in order to provide a better life for her adoptive sister Taylor, whom she hasn't been allowed to see since they were separated. Again, Violet has no recollection of the family she once had, so rather than grieve over her parting with her brother, she equates the situation to Gilbert instead. Still, the two young women become friends, and Violet suggests that since Amy can't see Taylor, she can write her a letter instead. The first time we see Benedict in the film is near the end of the first half when he delivers Amy and Violet's letters to Taylor at the orphanage. Something that actually made me think he used to live in an orphanage himself was how familiar he seemed with the setting and how exactly he handles the situation with Taylor. Instead of simply giving the letters to the caretaker, he delivers them straight to her. When he finds out she can't read, again, he doesn't give it to the caretaker to read to her later, but he instead sits with her on the steps and reads them to her himself. This, to me, speaks volumes about not just who he is, but what he's been through. He knows what a rarity it is for an orphan to receive a letter, not just from being one himself, but by being a postman. And it's this act that touches Taylor so much that she immediately calls him Big Brother.
Huh?
Now, I know his mild surprise and confusion is mostly due to the fact that this random child he just met is suddenly calling him her brother, but for all we know, Violet could have been old enough to call him brother before they were separated, and while it might not be the whole reason, it might partially be the reason why he becomes so invested in Taylor's search for Amy, and also why he maybe initially tried to stay away from it. He may feel like he's already failed his little sister, but damn it, if this little girl wants him to be her brother and needs his help, then that's what he'll do. Speaking of which, I love this little obvious brother-sister back and forth that Benedict and Violet have in Hagen's office while they're deciding what to do with Taylor. You can definitely see how their relationship has grown over the 3 years they've known each other.
私はここに来る前から郵便配達人になるって決めてたんだ。
ありえねえ。ガキができる仕事じゃねえよ。
そんなお願いだよ。
誰がニーニだ。
私からもお願いします。
お前ら。
そうだな。ベネディクト。せっかくだし、あくまでも見習いってことで。
と社長が申しております。
Dad said so. Then there's the sisters' quote-unquote reunion at the end of the film. I think it's so telling that for a series that is known for being a tearjerker, this is the first time we see Benedict cry. He doesn't seem like the type to cry, period, and definitely not in front of a woman he just met, so the fact that it's this moment that breaks him is more than interesting. Yes, again, I realize that this is a very emotional and important scene without the backstory, but if my theory is right, then this scene could almost be like a catharsis for Benedict. he knows what it's like to lose a sister, and ironically, he thinks that he'll never see her again. So to see Amy and Taylor meet again and reconnect might just mean a lot to him, especially since he was able to be a part of it. And because he knows what it's like to never see his sister again, and seeing what joy one letter could bring to the two of them, he later asked Taylor,
なあ、本当に会わなくてよかったのか？
ちゃんと一人前の郵便配達人になったら、そしたらその時にちゃんと自分で渡すんだ。
And it's this story, this letter, that puts the pep back in his step. It gives him hope, it gives him purpose. After spending years as a military messenger delivering battle plans and orders, the monotonous and seemingly unimportant job of a postman had begun to degrade on him. But it's Taylor, the sister he found, and Violet, the sister he lost, that teach him that he's delivering something much more important than orders with death sentences. He delivers happiness, and he's pretty content with that. So that's pretty much my theory. I hope that it makes somewhat sense. If it doesn't, I hope it was still entertaining, even though I may have seemed a little crazy. If there's something you found in the light novels that either bolsters or completely contradicts my theory, please feel free to share in the comments, or if something really resonated with you and you have something to add of your own mind, then feel free to comment that as well. I hope you really enjoyed this theory video. It was just kind of a thing that popped into my head, and I literally scrambled to write a script at 1 a.m. So I hope you really enjoyed it. I hope you all are staying safe and healthy, and have a wonderful day.